Kia ora tēnā tātou katoa. My name's Shane Clark, and it's my privilege to bring to you today's webinar, which happens to be number 40. So like all previous webinars, this webinar is with 5 NZIA CPD points, and all our previous webinars are available on the education page on our website. For those of you looking to learn a thing or two or crack up those CPD points. Today's topic is the Nuragrid. It's the topic. And some people say the sequel is never as good as the original. We're going to try and buck that trend today. So today is I guess, part 2 of a 2-part series. So last month, we broadcast direct from site and we showed you the Nuragrid in action and showed its installation live from site. Today's part 2 is more of a deeper dive, hopefully. So it goes to plan. If it goes to plan, we're going to give you sort of a blow-by-blow account of the build-up. We're going to show you some design files, design details, and talk about our Revit file we have to help you out. And then we're also going to highlight the multitude of surface finishes available. So, like I said today, the topic is the Nuragrid. And I guess if there's one key point to take away today is that Nuragrid provides a safe, secure, floated pedestrian surface. Lucky for you, I'm not the only person on the panel today. I've got Scott Squire, who's our Architectural Specifications Manager. Morning, Scott.
Morning. Morning, everyone.
And Sam. Sam's been with us for a while now. I think what's probably more important when we talk about your past. So, Sam, prior to this, before we got you to join the dark side, you were a commercial tiler. Is that correct? And you've done it for a little bit?
Yeah, I was a commercial and high-end residential. Ran a small tiling business for 20 plus years. So my background's in the construction industry.
Cool. So we'll say you're our expert for the dating. Thank you. Fantastic. All right. So like all our webinars, we try and keep them interactive as possible towards the end. So this goes for about 30 minutes. We sort of appreciate that, try and maximize the time. So yeah, it goes for 30 minutes. Please feel free to utilize the Q&A function at the bottom of the page there. And when we get to the end, we'll endeavour to get through a few questions. We may not get through all of them, but everybody who's registered today will get a transcript of the whole performance, including the Q&A section. So if we don't get to your question, it will come back to you in form of the transcript. So feel free to pump those questions in. Right. Where are we up to? So we're going to do a poll, keep everyone interactive. So the first poll we're going to pop up there is we just want to know if anyone's sort of had experience walking on a floated pedestrian surface that's sort of slightly unstable. Just keen to see who's had that. All right. Yes, it's a relatively common occurrence we see. So we're going to try and eliminate that with the Nuragrid. And just before we do kick on, I did mention that this is the second part of a 2-part series. So in the link, we're going to chuck a link up in the chat there, which goes back to the first part. So if you've no idea what I'm talking about, that's fine. Jin's going to throw a link into the chat and you can catch up in your own time, just our first part of this webinar, which was filmed live in sunny Tauranga. All right, let's flick to the first slide. We'll rip into it. And Scott, this is where you kick in. It's a very simple drawing. We're going to go through relatively quickly and just flick through a sandwich sort of build layer by layer. So over to you, Scott. What are you looking at here, mate?
Thanks, Shane. So what we're looking at here essentially is the beginning of the build-up. So we're looking at a recessed drain outlet and a substrate with falls in the substrate to promote drainage to that outlet. So now that substrate, it could be concrete, plywood, CLT with sheet membrane on top. It could also be an existing substrate such as pavers. The key thing for the jack system going on top is that substrate is stable and non-eroding. So swamp would not be good to put jacks onto, nor would liquefaction. So yeah, key thing is steady and stable. Yeah.
Nice. Right, go to the next slide there, Jin. So what have we done here?
So here we're introducing the self-leveling Nurajack deck pedestals. You can see that there's a raft of them set up here. So in terms of the configuration, it will vary depending on what you're doing, and to hopefully make your life a wee bit easier. If you go to nurajack.co.nz, up the top there's a technical drop down, and we have an online quantity surveying calculator. So basically you can go to that. There's a bit of a guide in terms of how to measure the deck area, so we can help guide you there. Basically you punch in the length, the width, and then also you enter fields, things like the tile length, the tile width, thickness of tile, spacing, and that will hopefully, well, it will spit out a schedule of quantities with sizes that you can then race down to placemakers, Bunnings, your local tile merchant, and purchase the jacks. So yeah, in terms of that configuration, it will vary, but we just show it here to illustrate a typical sort of arrangement for a tile. And the head, you can see the head on the jack there, that is a self-leveling head. So that will self-level up to 4.5 degrees. Anything greater than that, you introduce a shim beneath the base, and that just helps to offset the slope in the structure. We also have a thing candidly called a Nura wedge, which gives you 5 degrees plus. So we can accommodate a whole range of different substrates with the jack system.
Okay, so I think the next slide shows a bit of the cross-section of what we're talking about here. This is handy for designers to see a two-dimensional detail here. What have we seen here, Scott?
Yeah, so this is our CodeMark certified Nuratherm system with Nurajacks, and Nurajacks form part of that warm roof membrane system. So they're covered by the benefits of the CodeMark. In terms of compliance pathway, it's simple with the CodeMark. If your detailing aligns with the CodeMark details, council legally must accept it. It's also covered by the 20-year material defect warranty, so it gives you peace of mind. You can see that you've got the jacks on the membrane on PIR insulation board, so we guarantee that those jacks, they won't point load or damage the membrane, even on the PIR insulation board. So typically a jack would be load rated up to 1,000 kgs per jack. On the PIR, it's down to 600 kgs per jack, which is still pretty significant. So, I mean, we see a lot of heavy, things like spa pools being floated on jacks. The key thing is you'd just be introducing additional jacks to help distribute the load. What we're showing here is obviously a two-dimensional CAD detail. So again, if you go to the Nurajack website, that technical drop-down I was talking about, there's a section called Downloads, and from that, you can then download Revit CAD details that just make it so much simpler for integrating the Nurajack and the Nuragrid system into your design. So hopefully we're all about making life, I guess, simple and easy.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I see Jin's just chucked in the Revit file for the Nurajack. And what I think is quite clever about that particular file is as you grab that drawing and you elongate it to make the right height, the Revit file will tell you exactly which model of Nurajack or which extensions are required. So it does it all for you. So that's in the chat there. Hopefully that makes life nice and easy. And if we go to the next slide, Jin, it shows the next layer in our build-up. What are we looking at here, Sam? What have you done different?
Yeah, so this is obviously something extra that we can offer, and it's the Nuragrid system. I mean, pedestals direct to tile is still a very effective way to lay and build a low traffic podium or deck, but this is providing 100% support in comparison. So this is a Nuragrid. They clip together, the 500 by 500. The platform itself requires no accessories because of the design of the grate itself. And in the way that they interlock, they leave a small hole which allows you to access the pedestal stool and make adjustments. It's a very clever way to produce a platform that then you can follow through with whatever covering you want.
Sure. So speaking of coverings, if we go to the next slide, what are we going to be putting on top of this in this example? What have you done here?
Yeah, so this is similar to what we looked at in our last webinar. It was a case study. This is a typical structural tile. That's a tile that has the strength to be self-supporting. However, there's certain circumstances that you want more than just the corners supported in order to provide safety, perhaps. And in that example, that was necessary last month. So these tiles are loose laid over the grate system, and they're contained by these tile spaces you can see depicted here. So it's allowing that access that pedestal tiling is well known for.
Yeah, right. I guess if something should happen to a structural tile, you're avoiding the void below. You've still got that safety grid below you, haven't you?
Yeah, avoid the void. That's a good thing to think about when it comes to commercial spaces, high traffic areas, maybe fan zones. This is the system that we can recommend with structural tiles.
Awesome. So the next slide shows a bit of a problem/solution. So Sam, do you want to talk about what you did here? Back in the old days when you used to be a tiler.
Yeah, yeah. This is Bethlehem Shores, a nice project in Tauranga, and like typical apartment buildings or retirement villages, tiles direct to Nurajacks are specified, and it's definitely acceptable and adequate. But at times we have problems. So if you look at the picture on the right there, that's a internal gutter, and unfortunately the grout joint lined up with the edge of that gutter. So the pedestals would be unstable, and they weren't able to change the layout. And so the tiler was able to resolve the problem by putting in one row of Nuragrid, and essentially it just shifted that pedestal across 250 mil. So I think you've got a pretty good drawing to help understand that a bit.
Yeah. I mean, when Sam was trying to explain it to me, I drew an incredible design here just to sort of illustrate what the Nuragrid's doing. I think if you go to that next slide, Jen, you can see quite clearly we're trying to achieve here is basically the Nuragrid is covering the span over that internal gutter. So
right.
Is this the only area you used the grid in? So the rest of it was just back on jacks, is that right?
That's right. So it's something to consider. If it's still an area that is acceptable to use pedestal straight to tile, you can integrate grid to solve a problem quite easily. And in this situation, they weren't adding a lot of pedestals. They're just adding the cost of the grate in order to resolve this issue. But there are other times you might consider it. I think the next slide shows it quite well. So that's on the left there, a good example of a problem tiler's face. That's a downpipe, and the pedestal is very difficult to get all the way into the corner and support that tile properly. So by instead using a piece of Nuragrid in that spot, you can spread the pedestals out to where it's easy to fit them. You can even glue those tiles down and solve that problem, which is typical of most projects. The other one on the left there.
Sorry, Sam. Just in that photo there, I've also noticed that the Nurajack's really close to the wall. How do you do that? How do you achieve that?
It's quite a cool feature of the Nurajack. You can just snap the side off in order to move it right to the edge, and that is important for stability, supporting tiles right to the perimeter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate. Carry on. You're going to the other side of the slide there.
Right. So this is something that happens all the time, and tilers are just expected to solve it. But typically, a tile under 150 is very difficult to support with pedestals and to have a firm end result. So this picture here in Bethlehem Shores, it's a nice wraparound balcony, and it's very hard to avoid smaller cuts. So just for these two small cuts, the tiler chose to put two pieces of grid down, and it meant that the pedestals weren't interacting or overlapping, and those two tiles are firm. So you can view Nuragrid as something to solve problems as well as something that provides support in areas that need it.
Excellent. All right. And let's go to the next slide. I think we're going to try and show will you tell us what we're seeing here, Sam?
It's really the last piece of the puzzle when it comes to structural tiles. They're loose laid. We've shown earlier the tile spaces for the system that hold the tiles in place, but the perimeter still requires a 12 mil gap. And so this is the solve for that, a tile cladding clip that can hold that 12 mil gap as required with pedestal tiles.
Excellent. Yeah. All right. So the next slide shows another option.
Yeah,
Illustrates an option.
We're moving into something slightly different. When you're laying structural tiles, it might be that you do want to achieve something. For example, there might be a containment issue, and you can choose to simply glue those tiles down. And we've done a lot of testing on different sealants, and we have a good end result of a polyurethane that we can supply. That means you can fix any tile you want down. And the webinar last month saw a need for that. That it was a repair. The cuts around the perimeter were quite large, so they chose to glue all those perimeter tiles down to get the right end result. They glued any sections that they were concerned about to get a good end firm result. And we can provide instruction and the methodology for this if it's something that you would like to do with structural tiles.
Great. And I think we've got another way to bond the tiles. This has an additional benefit.
Yeah, so we've talked so far about structural tiles, but we're sort of moving into something different, and this is really leading into the design versatility, the options you can have if you choose to use Nuragrid. You can lay non-structural tiles as well. And so the method is more or stronger in order to glue those tiles down. But what we're looking to achieve with non-structural tiles, for example, you might have a nice 20mm limestone throughout a home, and that client wants that same tile outside. Well, they can't have that on pedestals. It's not strong enough. We need to strengthen it. And so we can do that with the method we have in order to bind it to the grid, producing a real strong end result, basically bringing it up to the structural standard.
Scott, one thing you kind of see at your specifier level is another issue that this fully bonding fixes. You want to touch on that?
Yeah, so I guess just in terms of fully bonding, thinking about, we're talking about bonding the tile to the grid, but we're still meeting E2AS1 compliance in terms of being raised and removable. It could be arguable how you're gluing a tile to the grid, but we do see, and we have detailing showing in a localized inspection hatch that can be used to access the membrane, the drain outlet beneath.
Sure.
So it maintains that drainage plane underneath because you've got the jacks and then the grid, then obviously the tile on top. But yeah, it does in terms of wind uplift, so bonding tiles to the grid. We are seeing projects where the Nurajacks with the grid are being adopted on finished membrane warm roofs. So bonding that tile, and it does depend on what tile you're using, how you glue it, and we're happy to help there with exploring adhesives. But you get excellent wind uplift, so that KPA in terms of the wind uplift pressure, some of the testing that we've seen, it gives a pull strength of up to 11 kPa ULS, which is massive. The Nurajack system, we do have a clip that can be used, but you need to rebate the corner of the tile, the edge of the tile, and that's without the grid. So yeah, look, it's just another benefit that Nuragrid system offers.
Nice. I think the next two slides sort of touch on what you mentioned about accessible spots.
Yeah. Sam, do you want to elaborate on this one?
Yeah, so raised and removable, this still qualifies, as Scott mentioned, but for maintenance, we need access. And for you, if you're specifying this, you might want to include detail in order to provide that access. And the drawings that we can provide show that you can put a inspection hatch anywhere within that grid surface. If we slide to the next slide, it would be by using these with the little lifting keys. You can lift it up, do maintenance, do inspections as necessary, and it becomes quite a usable space for those doing maintenance. So it's something certainly that needs to be included. Just talking a little bit about this, if you are looking to consider putting natural stone that's not structural over Nuragrid, we can help you with some reports that highlight the point loading strength, different glues that you can use, the methodology and installing them. In fact, installation instructions, they're all available if you need them.
Nice. So the next slide, I think, just shows some more sort of problem/solutions here. I guess on a traditional pedestal system, do you want to tell us what we're looking at here, Tim, from your perspective, mate?
So this is an awesome example of where the Nuragrid can offer design versatility. So typically this piece of stone, it's a rumbled edge limestone, would not be able to be used in this situation. It's over external waterproofing. And then the other aspect of this project is they wanted to incorporate a French lay pattern. So we see that depicted there on the left. And that again is very difficult to do on pedestals. No matter what tile you're using, it's hard to get small tiles so close together to be firm as an end result. So this is a really awesome result for this client. This is Cape Canapas. They're a high-end golf resort. They've got awesome natural feel right throughout their resort, and they were told they had to use a imitation travertine on their internal courtyard. Instead, they're able to achieve this.
Right, and I see the Nuragrid system there holding up the additional weight of those giant pots.
Yeah, it's worth considering what you can put on top. If these tiles were to break and they didn't have Nuragrid under them, well, it would be quite an eyesore, could be dangerous, could damage the waterproofing. Nuragrid adds that layer of safety and then the option to put things on top, certainly.
Oh, so the next slide again just touches on that point of design versatility. What have you done here?
So this is something we do get a lot of inquiry about, and the ability to support turf. In fact, we're really starting to appreciate this is an ideal way to produce a raised turf platform. It's a very easy to install, simple platform that the either the turf installer or the builder can build, and then they seem to be very happy with our Nuragrid as an acceptable substrate for them to lay their product over. So it's not complicated, but it's really a good option that we can provide.
Yeah, and I'll just also add to it, Sam, we're also seeing on finished membrane roofs, instead of a traditional approach where you'd fix a timber batten, dress it independently with membrane, and then fix the artificial grass to it, which can be done, but it's quite a traditional labor intensive, material intensive and expensive way of doing it. You can instead put jacks on the membrane, obviously, no point loading, no issue, grid, and then weight down the artificial grass on top. So we're seeing that on podiums and also some finished roofs where they don't want to go with a true green roof or a ballast roof. We're also seeing the grid being used to support ballast. So it might be that you want to put a riverstone on top. The grid is an excellent solid platform. You'd then put a geotextile fabric down just to prevent any sediment getting through, and then you can put your ballast on top. And what that does is obviously the void beneath, you know, if you want a finished level roof and you've got a sloped roof structure, then it gives a level finish, a void in between that would otherwise be filled with a lot of riverstone, which adds weight and naturally then translate to more structure, more cost, you know. So it's just a smart, lightweight way of doing it. And again, if needed, you can then remove the ballast or grass and get underneath, check out the membrane below.
Yeah, nice lightweight solution there. So the next slide, Sam's a very quick case study where we've done this.
I can be quick, yep. This was a situation where a homeowner, their daughter stepped outside and slipped on the tiles and injured herself. So he wanted a nicer platform. He went with this system, which the result is a level entry turf. She still can play netball on it. It was cost effective. It was installed over the previous tiles, and they're really happy with the look of it. So this is what it can achieve, even in a residential situation, certainly in a commercial or podium. It's a good option. And one thing to add that the grass companies really do like is the heat factor. Because of the air underneath, heat can be a factor with turf. Certainly not an issue when laying over Nuragrid.
Fantastic. And the next slide just shows, I think, a culmination of your different finishes.
That's right. And it's something that is wanted on podiums, mixed materials on top. Well, you can consider the Nuragrid as just a raised platform that you can do whatever you want with. And it's quite easy to transition from, for example, tile to grass is depicted here or onto pebbles. It allows for a lot of design versatility.
Very good. Well, we're getting to the end. Just to recap, this was the second part of a two-part series. This is where we filmed from last month. Jin's, like I said earlier, has chucked that link up in the chat. These tiles are all floated on the grid system, and yeah, a much nicer surface to work on, and it was a great surface to have your dinner on that night before. So it's a great spot. So check it out if you like. We are coming to the end, which is all good, or sad for some others. We've got a few questions and whatnot to go through. I've got a lot of questions there. We'll just start with those. Right, first question I've got here is, can you walk on the turf in high heels? I haven't tried it.
We think you should try, Shane.
Okay.
We do get asked that a bit. One of the methods for installing turf is to weigh it down with sand. Certainly the turf companies have no concern with this. We've tried to puncture the displays we have with sharp objects, but it's certainly no concern at all. The end result, and it really is a question to a turf company, but all the interaction we've had so far, it's not a problem.
Okay. And just when we're talking about turf, if you like, we're talking about artificial grass, not green roof, sod roof type. Yeah, so it is an artificial grass that we're talking about here. Next question, and this is always a popular question, is cost.
It is popular. Well, perhaps if you were to consider using Nuragrid for a podium, we would describe it as cost comparative with an aluminium frame system, which is common on a podium. And we have actually had a few examples where both have been priced and they've come in very close. Potentially with the labour component coming down, as tradesmen are familiar with it, it would come cheaper. But the main thing to consider is the difference. On a podium, you're getting 100% support. Tricky little tiles, all supported well. And so it's cost comparative, but a lot of extra options. If you were to compare it to other great systems in the market, it's definitely the cheapest, simplest to install, and it's all part of one code mark. So there's a lot of advantages to our product for price. Yeah.
Scott, this one's got a bit of a architectural tint to it, I think. What is the acoustic advantage of the system? Does it provide any acoustic?
Yeah, so it does help. So we've got acoustic test data for jacks on an acoustic separation pad that we provide, so that is self-adhering, goes beneath the base of the jack, and then it obviously sits on your structure, be it membrane, whatever, and that has a reduction of 25 decibels in terms of footfall. Obviously, adding things like the warm roof component with a dense, say, 2-layer membrane, that will help just reduce unwanted sound transmission from above down through into the structure. So acoustically, the system is very good, and adding the grid, will help furthermore. So no, it's definitely does help. Yep.
Acoustics, cool. Quick one here. How thick is the Nuragrid? How much extra height does it add?
It's 40 mil, and we have pedestals that are adjustable from 8 mil. We can even go lower than that with our shim system. So probably the combined thickness minimum would be 43 mil.
43 mils. Okay.
Yep.
Where you can start from. Do you lay timber on the Nuragrid, or would you just carry on using the jacks on a timber frame? What you do there?
You can, if you want, you can try it. We'd be happy to sell more grid, but it's really not necessary. Timber in itself is structurally strong, and the method of installing timber onto joists, whether it be aluminium or timber, is the best way to do that, and it can easily integrate and butt up to our grid system. So you can consider it, but it's not necessary.
Okay, fantastic. What is Nuragrid made of?
Plastic. It's 80% recycled plastic, so the same as all of our products. It's we're trying to be eco-conscious there, but it is a polypropylene that's made of, which I think is reinforced polypropylene. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. All right. I'm just keeping an eye on the time. We aren't going to get through all the questions. They're still coming in, which is great. But like I said, we'll come back to you on the transcript with a full Q&A that's filled out there. We're just going to finish up with a quick poll. We're just basically asking what your opinion is, what you'd like to know. What topics, basically. If you've got any hot topics you want us to cover in the next coming webinars, we're trying to, some of the feedback we've got, we want to get a bit more technical, which is great. It is difficult to do in a half-hour time slot, so we are available outside of these time slots to come in and ask the real tricky technical questions. Feel free to populate that. Just while you're doing that, so today we talked about the Nuragrid and how we can provide a safe pedestrian surface in a floated situation. Exactly what the Nuragrid is designed to do. Hopefully we gave you a sort of a build-up of how the system goes together. There's some design details there from your design perspective on how it all can be built and dragged and dropped into your drawings. And then we showed you sort of the design versatility of the multiple different surfaces we can finish on there. So that's hopefully what we've instilled today. And then the last poll is, if you're working on a project at the moment around this sort of topic and you'd like a follow-up from someone in the team, just click yes or no, and the team will be in touch. You populate that. All right. Thank you to my panelists. Thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, Sam. It'd be today on the tool, surely.
Sure. Yep. Back out in the rain. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks very much. Ka kite. We'll see you on the next one.